Last things first, you already win. You already him, you don't gotta pretend. Fuck them, you already king. You stay real, you confident in your skin. It's all now, sit in the power that you already in. This the story of a master from a true Bedouin, far away from home than few ever been. First round pick, league of the smooth gentleman. The game rigged like 50 said it's a cruel sentiment. I'm from the era when lyrics and bars is over everything. 5-star veteran. You couldn't walk in my fucking shoes or carry them. Excuse my borderline is very thin. Been married to the game like ever since maybe 2010. I realized most of y'all not serious. Point blank period. I flex and twist necks like cherry stems. Thought he was buried, but there he is, a new narrative. I keep winning.
They not used to what you bringing, kid.
I keep winning.
They don't even know what they looking at.
I keep winning.
Man, yo, pick one lane and stay in that
I keep
shit.
winning. How we doing? What's good, everybody? I tried to slowly fade the music out. I think we did it there. I think we got it. What's going on, y'all? This is episode 84, How Billy Sees It. Today is October 14th, 2024, and I'm very happy to be here. We've got a very cool, special guest. We've been trying to get this conversation going for a while, and I will introduce him and allow him to introduce himself. Let me just bring him on. Arturo, Viscarra, what up?
Hey, what's up, Billy? How's it going?
How's it going, man?
All right.
Thanks for doing this. Thanks for being here. We wanted to talk about a bunch of stuff. There's a lot going on. Today's Indigenous Peoples Day, among other things going on today. And I'm thinking, how do I get into a conversation where we can learn about how we view the world and talk about all these things? And I think I want to start with healing. I want to start with a conversation about healing, bro. So, if I say healing, if I talk about healing, what does that mean to you? How would you define that? And what does it mean, to you for your life?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm certainly not an expert.
Mm.
I definitely, had been in my estimation, in a process of healing for a while now, but to different degrees, right?
Yeah.
And it's definitely been more intense in the last couple of years than the last year. I think that there's, could be healing on an ancestral level, family level, and then obviously on an individual level, which is, the only thing you can really control. But you can, be involved obviously with other people, especially, those closest to you.
Yeah.
And they're related, right? So lots of times, you have to kind of involve people to a degree, no matter what. But I would just say, trying to, literally just, get things emotionally at a place where you're, not hurting other people because of your trauma, because of not hurting yourself further,
Right.
because of it. I think those, having those two things be pretty front and center.
Yeah, I think of it a lot about like my definition, how I think about myself. How do I define myself? What am I supposed to be doing and things like that. It's been crazy. It's a journey. It's a journey, and it's been a journey for me. And maybe we can tease it out. But I know for you, you and I both have this background in international relations. Tell me a bit about that. You do law and international relations. How'd you get into that?
Yeah, I mean, I just, kind of more, I really got radicalized more. I started to get radicalized in college. I mean, I think I was always, predisposed, right? But more when I got more into just reading basically history, both even more so with international relations, more recent history, not talking about hundreds and hundreds of years ago or even before that, but more World War II. I remember that was one of the first books that I read in my freshman year, first year introduction to international relations.
Mm-hmm.
So I finished that degree, and I later I also did a master's in it at the same time that I was in law school. And I actually wanted to do that more, was a kind of a condition that I went to that law, because I wanted to get be able to do a dual degree, and that's definitely my still my passion, even though I've been doing other type of work at times. But I'm also just trying to separate the two, like work and like activism.
Mm,
Um, I think that's also for me. That's part of my healing.
mm.
Um,
Why is that
but
way?
anyway, like yeah, international relations is definitely my
Mm.
my shit. What I like, it's hard to keep up, obviously, if you're not. But you can obviously apply things that you learned, and with a framework of like understanding like what was going on right up until you're an adult. So
Yeah.
and then you can start making up your own decisions, right?
Yeah, for me, being radicalized, like you said, it came from actually asking serious questions, right? So instead of having a kind of simplistic sense of how nation states and blah, blah, this trade and da, once you get into the actual weeds of like how countries have interacted with each other, um, the reasons we have the international bodies that we have from the UN and the international, courts of justice and
Right.
all of these things, the reasons they exist. Why they were given these charters, and you see that power tugs even um, within a place like the UN, because there's these like veto votes, and the way it's structured
Mhm.
gives power. You realize that there's so much more to understand, and like this is like I just feel like complexity radicalizes you. Honest, like real complexity has to radicalize you, and it's almost it's just the truth. It's also sort of a challenge, kind of a burden of the left, I think.
Yeah, well, I mean, I would say it should be civics, kind of education about like just certain things about, especially about the UN, which what it was supposed to be, which the US has always exercised extraordinary amount of power in it. And but at the same time, it doesn't really want its own population to even know about it, right? Or care about what it does
Right.
for the most part.
Hmm.
Almost every once in a while when it can utilize it, but like, if you just see like the latest UN report on Israel Palestine, the US doesn't want you to know any of that stuff, right? And then it doesn't want you to know, the layers of like the, just regional politics, right? And I find it really. And by the way, what did you also studied at school, IR?
Yeah, yeah, ethics actually.
Right,
Focus on like ethics philosophy. But
right
yeah,
on. But we shouldn't like. I think a lot of people. It should be more generalized knowledge, is what I would say, right? Like
yeah,
international stuff, understanding other countries, because also like even if like the United States scene, the average United States scene is very you know, uh, Americentric, that is not looking outside of the borders of
no,
the U.S. Like these issues affect your life,
big
and we're
time.
seeing it right now. One way you can pretend that Israel and Palestine doesn't matter that much, but I mean, it affects how the rest of the world treats the U.S. It's a historical thing, one way or the other.
Yeah,
Migration, right now it's like could swing the election, but like it's also because there wasn't. You can't even talk. You can't even have an actual realistic conversation about the issues.
exactly. I think for me, one of my biggest frustrations and passions is about like this discourse, about like cleaning up our discourse, the way we talk to each other, some honesty around discourse, especially at the top, especially when I say the top, I mean like the big, network television discourse. Um, it's too cheap. It's too easy. It's too produced. It's too backed and funded. There's too much chipping away of reality and giving us something like simple because reality would challenge all of the myths. Um, to me, the journey's been crazy, just like accepting accepting truth as it presents itself to you, and then allowing that to broaden your understanding of what reality is.
Right. I mean, actually, the way you put it, for me, I think for me, healing and this conversation are also connected because it's about the truth, right? You
Yes.
you want to live. I mean, I think if you want to heal, you want to live in truth, and in all the ways around, right? In your word and being around people that are true to their words. Obviously we all fuck up, right?
Yes.
Um, but just in general, and yeah, and I think it's just crazy to me, like how yeah, how brainwashed people can be to just, and it's not just that it happens in the US, but anywhere, like how,
Everywhere.
nationalism,
Yeah.
just really just shapes your point of view and what you consume, and also what you know, they don't censor the news, right, quote unquote, in the US, but I mean, most of the stuff that's been happening in, Israel's about to basically confiscate northern Gaza. And people said, oh, a year ago, people that said that was going to happen, that was like
They were
the
right.
end game, were like, dismissed as, you know, hysterical. And now they're like doing it, and the same people are still quiet about it, and they just don't even publish. Like they're just like, oh, there's Gaza fatigue, so they're gonna stop. Yeah, what do you stop publishing? Which stories?
Exactly. No, this stuff is very intentional. What I find crazy, is the mix of the sort of the large scale profit motive that produces this, but also on an individual level. Arturo, we lost you, bro. Hold on. Let me bring you back.
I'm back.
You good?
Sorry.
Okay, no worries. But like you said, like people don't want to deal like people like the other day the State Department guy, Mr. Miller or something, he was saying they were asking seriously about like investigations for the murder of Hind Rajab, that young girl, and other things. And he just had a smirk on his face where he reduced everything to no, we don't work with Hamas. We don't recognize Hamas. Which then, because he has that sentence and that framework, it justifies every lie that he tells on that podium. It justifies to him everything that Netanyahu can be rationalized because they've set this framework up, this simplistic framework of the East and the West and the good people and the terrorists. And I'm just constantly encouraged by, like, that's why I'm trying to do this, man. This to build spaces where we can have like really conversations with depth, where we move past avatars to actually understand what is. Giving like real proper language to the stuff, and that to me, that's what journalism is. And that's why I think it's important to like actually redefine journalism and to like you know what I'm saying, like it's not just working for like a place that has cameras. It's for like trying to give language to reality, you know?
Right. Right. Exactly. I mean, yeah. I think that's also, yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, obviously, there's people that are like seeing past like the bullshit propaganda and framework that has like, and how that framework made more sense, at least to a certain degree, after the Holocaust, right? And obviously, like, you know, it's complicated, but Israel is, it's been existing, right? Nobody's saying for it to be. I don't think, most normal, or at least there's not this like open call for it to be wiped off the map, but you can't even criticize it
You have to look at what it
because that's
is.
anti-Judaism, because
It's
that's anti-Semitism. It's
it's
crazy,
absurd. Look at it the way you would look at any other country. Look at it the way you would look at any
right?
other country in that region, in fact, right? I remember I growing up hearing like when first off acts of terrorism, we link it immediately to religion and we say things like, oh, these people can't handle they were saying that Gazans couldn't handle democracy. They voted in terrorists. They don't know how to handle. Does anyone say that about Israel? They voted
Right.
in terrorists. They voted in Netanyahu, these crazy right-wing lunatics who have a messianic vision. No one,
Yeah.
no one does that rhetorically, God.
Right, and that's like even that's like hard right in Israel.
Right.
So, and how they've been, right. Zionism has like, it's still a hard right colonialist government. I'm supposed to support it because it's Jews. I mean,
It doesn't make sense.
it,
And it's
that doesn't make sense one way. Like, and that's not anti-Semitic. It's in a sense what I mean. The problem is that, so they're basically saying that there is open white supremacy. There's open, you know, ethno nationalism and a superiority complex that is like right there,
right there.
and there's more people that are realizing that
That's
because
it.
it's just not working, and that's why they still won't, highlight what's going on and how many people have been being killed in Gaza and the West Bank and Lebanon because because it's becoming like that whole framework is becoming unsustainable. I believe it's just you have to be really like ignorant, purposefully ignorant or stupid,
Yeah,
or just or you're complicit and you're like, I'm okay with this.
correct. And it's strange how people really do fit in them categories, man. You know, and again for me, back to journalism again. I feel like we have this. We can actually anchor ourselves in an ideal around journalism, right? Because where it's about humanism, like it's about telling truth from a position of humanism. You're not just balancing different sides. You are like we have to elevate humanism because in the 1930s when they were lynching young boys, young black boys, when the journalist goes over and reports without the humanist lens, they simply sort of talk about it like a sport event, you know? If without the humanist lens, it's not journalism, you see? Like, and I think that our whole way of talking about truth has to like evolve to um ground itself in humanism. But that's gonna challenge a lot of the stuff with, the capitalist sort of, individualistic society that we have.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's all related, you know, because it's just the pressure to and like the pressure to produce and the precarity that so many people live under it's just too much. And then it's just everything is monetized, like, and obviously everything has become more expensive in the US,
Yeah.
right? And in a way all over the world, or a lot of parts of the world. um but it's pretty unsustainable, and like in general, or you have to just, or they're gonna have to, like, the empire, like a waning empire, it's gonna have to just be even more and more obvious, even though it has been obvious. Like Iraq was obvious, the last
Yeah.
Iraq war. But then it just, you get at least get to see like how some people are just, they'd rather protect, live in willful ignorance. But at the same time, I do see how it's just, that's just that's how the system has them. And there's, it's complicated where that line of responsibility actually you know holds, with so much economic pressure on
Yeah.
folks.
It's very complicated. It's very complicated. And it's funny to see how I try to think about how other historical moments must have been because I'm in a position now where like my wife is in like a challenging place with her family because she is out there and very outspoken about the genocide, and she expects the people around her to do the same. And our family has a more of a, like an apolitical approach, and the challenge of like, we're getting into like the Christmas season coming up here. It's just weird, and but you like you said, people have responsibilities. We all have a role that we're living in the imperial machine, and that's just an incredibly complex and thing. You don't have many solutions here, right? We can at least just kind of discuss how complex it is.
Yeah, like, and also, would it be better or worse if people consciously, or do they consciously understand that, that there's also, even if it's shit here, there's a relation between, the relative wealth of the West and the relative poverty of the rest of the world, the global South, the third world. The exploitation by, that continues through imperialism, and you know whether it
Absolutely.
be private or public or both, which is usually, it's both. Both, led by other governments and by their corporations. So do people want to know that? I don't know. I mean, I don't know if that would be
No.
better or worse if everybody kind of had that. Well, I think a lot of people realize it, like, indirectly,
Yeah.
but they kind of, they push it down. And
Yeah.
then but then some people might actually take a, if you do understand that, really, then you have to take another position whether it's okay or right. And the way it is now, I think there might be even more people that would just be okay with it, right? Like,
Yeah. I think people actually are quite kind of tacitly okay with it. Everyone kind of winks and nods and goes about their business, and the people who make a little fuss kind of get they're kind of annoying. It's like, get out of here. We don't want to have to deal
Yeah.
with that.
But it's still great to talk to. I mean, but if you're gonna have an opinion, you got to talk to all sorts of people, or at least some, right? Or at least read some, some quote unquote some media from your ops, because otherwise, if you're just in a bubble,
Yeah,
it's just,
you got to be
it's
careful
just,
with bubbles
yeah,
for
even
sure.
more and more now. Yeah.
Yeah, but even like, okay, so you've done work with asylum seekers from Mexico. Is that correct? And other parts of Central and Latin America.
Yeah, I mean, well, it was in Mexico, so
Okay.
it wouldn't then. It was only limited times we worked with Mexican migrants, and so, but then it was from all over the world. There was people, because they're like going through Mexico to get to the U.S. And but obviously there was some nationalities way more represented than others. So
Yeah.
um, Central America, uh, particularly Honduras, and then different times also like Haiti, 2021, especially Venezuelans 22 and 23,
Okay.
um, where they just kind of become the majority. Like, they're not a majority. They're below 50%, but they're I forget whatever that word is for, like, the biggest group or nationality.
Plurality is that it?
Right, the plurality.
Hmm.
That's those two countries that I mentioned, and that's just like kind of like over the last 6 years, kind of with Hondurans, Haitians, Venezuelans, at least, is like the ones that were like the plurality. I'm unsure exactly what it is right now, but
Okay.
it
What?
kind of, and then it just kind of waxes and wanes, and there's times when there's like, just like a spike from Africa, or specific countries in Africa,
Yeah.
spike from China, a spike from other places, but that's kind of been in general.
What's the most annoying part of the immigration conversation that you've seen in our national debate? Obviously, Trump is not great, and I think Harris is running to his right now. And so, what's the dumbest, worst part of the conversation that you would say?
I mean, I just don't think that there's just, I think, in a way, for me, I don't know what the word is. Maybe we'll get back to that part, but like, um it's just, you can't have a realistic conversation about and immigration policy, because so it's just like this really distorted thing, and the Democrats, you know the Republicans just distort it and make it, way worse. Like, for now, that, like, everybody, for example, people are now all being released from uh mental institutions, and he's just doubling down on calling people rapists and
From
criminals.
Congo, from
That too.
from Central Africa, somehow shipping them over here. But go ahead. Yes.
Right, right, right. I saw that. Right, that's right. It's tied into it as well. I missed that part. I just saw how he had insulted Congo. But it's just right. But why is it that way? Why is Congo? Um, what's the turmoil,
Yeah.
right? And they don't want to have that conversation, because obviously, because that's empire, right?
Right.
Even if it's not, or at least empire is a player, one way or the other. But they don't even want to acknowledge that openly, either one way or the other,
Right.
right?
Exactly.
Even if it's France, or another country from Europe, that's more involved than the U.S. on that, per se, right? Which is often the case in Africa, at least. But in Latin America, it's always the U.S. There's nobody else is, you know,
Yeah.
everybody else is a two-bit player, including China. you know. So, and that's the way it's been since the Monroe Doctrine, and even before that. So that's hundreds and hundreds of years. And so then let's just say, from our, Haiti, Honduras, Venezuela, the U.S. is intimately involved in creating the, the disruption, the chaos, the political upheavals, the choosing of whose rules, and then that blows up in your face, put the cooing, and then you pretend like you had nothing to do with it, and it's just absolute bullshit. All you have to do is, like, read about it.
Yeah.
It's right there. The information is right there, but people don't want that. People, you know, I would think what I was going to say was the Democrats lose again. If Trump wins again, you can. It's going to be close enough. You can say that it's because of immigration is a winning strategy. It's a winner, right, for him. And um, the Democrats will have nobody to blame but themselves because they are incapable of talking about the benefits of migration on a real level, like on at least on an economic level, right? And they can't even do that. Like they can't even do that well. And then on top of it, it's like, well, all like Biden wasn't much better on the border than Trump. It was very, very limited ways. Some of the other ways that what he did was worse than Trump. So like you can't beat them to the right. It's impossible.
It's about,
Like you're
but they think they're clever. See, I could say like I used to do like be a Hill person and some of the campaign stuff. They're not even looking at reality anymore. This is another
right.
feature. They're not looking at reality. They're not looking at people. They're looking at those numbers and those poll things and they did little focus groups and there's keywords and things that they want to hit and they think they have to tell a very simple story. And so like you said, they don't know how to invest in the fullness of the story, which is like you said, like the positive effects
Right.
of migration. But that's a longer story. That's actually a meaningful story instead of like sound bites. And this goes back to like the cable news structure, which like only gives you 2 minutes to say the trash you have to say.
Yeah, but Democrats could, if they got out a messaging strategy, and even if it took a while for it to take off, they could have done it.
They can
They
do
could
it.
have.
They're not
They could
creative.
have. They could do it, or they could have done it
Yeah.
before this election. Obviously, it's too late if they tried to do it now.
Right.
And it's just how are you? And again, it's just for me, it's not. It's complicated because I'm Salvadoran, and I am obviously I'm relatively privileged, very much so. You know, I don't like the fact that we had to come to the U.S. to find that, but that was, but again, the U.S. played such a huge role, like it's doing now in Palestine, right? Of supporting a dictatorship, a violent dictatorship, giving it arms, right? Um, and so a lot of people had to leave, right? But so then I see these people, some of them, my people, which has expanded for me.
Mm,
The
mm,
longer I've worked with people, now I kind of see it as like poor migrants are my people, like, somewhat.
mm,
It's complicated,
mm.
because obviously that I'm still Salvadoran, right? I didn't turn Haitian, right? So, um,
But you
I
see
just think,
you see the commonalities with Haitians
of
and yeah,
course, yeah, it's you'd have to be blind not to if you're doing this work, right?
right.
And but then so then what I wanted to say was that there's this, if the Democrats lose because of like the caravans and or just all the migration that became, that they never had a good way of talking about for the last 6 years, or longer, last 6 years, then and all of the Democrats have been just as involved in this destabilization, the coups, all this stuff that these, specifically these three countries still in the, very, very recent past. Coup in Haiti 2004, coup in Honduras 2009, attempted coups and destabilization and sanctions against Venezuela, which I guess the sanctions are working, right? That's why people are leaving because they're starving, right?
Hmm.
So they don't want to even have to have those conversations.
Yeah.
Like that's another one. You don't want to have to talk about U.S. sanctions against Venezuela. Like, so are they working? Because if they're working, that means that there's correlation with people, with the
Right.
economy going to shit and people going and leaving, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Or is it not working? Should you not take, then stop taking it out on the people? Like, you're fucked if you articulate a policy in a way because it's empire, right? And the real policy is ugly, right? The real it's like, we don't give a fuck. We're gonna subjugate them, even if that means it kind of contributes to the Democrats losing power. And I think that's amazing in a way. You know what I mean? And I hope, I don't want Trump to win, but if he wins, you know, like, that's chickens coming home to roost for the Democrats, right? As Malcolm X said, right? Like this is like very literally, right? In a
Yeah.
way, like it's people coming home to roost. It's empires, fruits, the fruits
Yeah.
of empire. And so since the Democrats can't talk about this seriously, they're just, you know what I mean? Since they can't talk about the benefits of migration seriously, if they lose because of that, there's just a certain satisfaction to it. But at the same time, it's built on the suffering of these migrants, millions of people,
Yeah.
and also more suffering in the U.S., at least domestically. But like, who's the sage that can say it's gonna? I hate also like, it can only get worse
Yeah.
with a republic. It's just like at this point, really, you can look into the fucking future, and even if that like, and then even looking back, or do you do a real analysis?
They're not
Because again,
serious, man. They're not
they're
serious.
not
It's not
liberals ain't serious. Liberals ain't
no, they're
serious.
not. They don't even really mean that shit. They don't care. Look, they're here to promote their team, you know? And you see that with the Palestine stuff. You see this inability to call things what they are, you know? So it doesn't matter. They're here to support their team. And I find like you try to respond like, wait a second, look at history. You try to like make
Yeah.
correlations and obvious things, and it doesn't matter. They're here to support.
Like
They're here to
it's
support
like they
their team.
stuff their fingers in their ears, man. Some of these people, like worse than conservatives, like a person I'll take a intellectually, honest conservative every day over a fucking bullshit liberal, man.
Yeah,
At least as far as I have a conversation with somebody,
yeah.
like yeah. I mean, because I definitely,
It's in
left,
either
right. What
case.
does it mean?
Yeah,
Sometimes it's like I still somewhat describe myself as a leftist, but I still say that. But at the same time, I hate other people like on the left. Some of them, because of their positions, because of their actions, you know. Uh,
that's that's what you're judging them. You know what I mean? Like, and even those
yeah,
words, left, right. You know, I try to like they lose their meaning. They were trying to point to something, but in truth, it's in every moment you're just assessing how someone sees this. Again, if they have kind of a humanist ethic, or are they profit driven, or are they something like this, or they have some sort of a nationalist ethic. You know,
I think that's the default.
what's the default?
The the nationalist,
That people are kind of identity driven and nationalist.
at least as far as that's what we would call, international relations. Um, kind of these things that people don't want to even admit impact them, right? It's like kind of they want to, in a sense, like you know, delegate, delegate foreign policy to their party, right? That is what people do in this. That's how they see it, I think.
Delegate
Um,
third party to who?
delegate foreign policy
Okay,
to their party.
to their party.
They
Whatever.
just kind of, and then like they think they can't really impact it, and they don't want to spend the time more thinking about it. And especially if it's something that you could tell is like, um, controversial, and obviously people getting fired if you say the wrong thing even on social media, right? And
It's crazy. But to me, this means to me, and I know that I'm in a privileged place as well, and so I take that into account, but I recognize that like this is a sign that we have to go that I have to go there. Like the fact that Congress signed a thing very quickly to try to fuse anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism. I mean, that's incredible. That's incredible what
right,
that is. That's a linguistic move. That's a trick. This is some old school stuff. This is stuff we used to read about in terms of what Black Americans had to suffer through. This kind of like legal jargonese like ways to rationalize and normalize whatever they wanted. All of their values go out. So to me, I have to figure out a way to like go there because it's calling us to. That's a challenge. Versus being scared about it.
yeah, for sure, right? Or if you sense fear there, that means that's where, because the truth is around there, right? And I think it's definitely waking. You know, yeah. I mean, I'm 44 now, so I don't, I feel like it's just, there's been other moments where it's like, oh, things are changing, right? But I do think that this is just the whole, what's happened in Israel and Palestine in um, the last year is like waking more people up to this, right? Because if it just doesn't, their propaganda just doesn't.
It's not
doesn't
working.
work anymore.
No,
They look stupid.
they look really bad.
Like in a sense, like every time they're going on and speaking directly, like especially like Israeli officials, it's just like you have to really be stupid, ignorant, or you're complicit to
To
believe any
believe
of this
any of
shit.
that. Yeah.
Because it's just like, what are you? That just I just compared what you said with this news report. Like you can't like they don't. They're just like they don't give a shit,
They're
and it's
also, yeah,
just
they don't give a shit, and they're flexing a very interesting, creative language thing. I mean, you're familiar with Hasbara, right? The it's like these, it's like a it is it's employed all the time. It's a media. It's a way of like first off, it translates as as explaining, but this is a way of talking that is um it distracts in the conversation. This is how they distract the conversation to they simply like flip things. You
I
know,
mean, it's the same. I find it very, very similar to you. You know how the U.S. talks. It's just a little bit more rage filled. You know, like of course we're just fighting the terrorists,
exactly.
right? Like
Yeah,
there's no other point of view besides
exactly.
those people are disgusting terrorists, and it's just like
Animals.
yeah, and if you don't believe that, then you know
But
it's
that's
just
the thing.
gross.
That's the thing. The thing is this kind of like assertion. Where at the beginning, like at the very beginning of this thing, remember there's like, do you condemn Hamas? It sets the tone of the conversation, right? If the other person says yes, then they've already won like 50% of the argument. You know what I'm saying? Before you even have to get a chance to talk about the historical realities of what's going on. Um, and I find that incredibly troubling, and I notice that, and I feel compelled to help us all notice that, notice these little conversational rhetorical things, you know. um
Right, right, and that's just I mean, and it's also come on, you funded like Netanyahu's government, and you know, and on different security forces have for a very long time funded Islamic like the Islamist groups to be able to put them as a counterpoint against a more effective secular you know, liberation force,
Correct.
you know, and to as part of their destabilization tactics, as part of their you know ability to try to keep the colonies, and that's just fact. You can Google that right now,
That's fact.
and then they use them as being Islamists or you know more fundamentalists as the way to just completely discredit them. Use Islamophobia and use just like and you know the connection that's so obvious Islam and terror, and it's just like well you didn't you because you help bring these people to power.
Correct.
And on top of it, then there's a political wing, there's a military wing,
Yes.
there's you know services. It's a fucking political party, and it's what you call a terrorist. It's its own wing. It's a little. It could be. You know. It could still. That might sound weird in a certain way, but the scene. It's like so. Then it's just. But what? So you condemn the entire Israeli government,
That's
or
right.
do you condemn the IDF?
See, that's the thing.
Because those people, you can't even ask them that. Do you condemn the IDF? Right?
Nope, you can't. And that nuance, this kind of like the way you're describing uh in detail the political condition on the ground, they don't allow that detail, you know, that texture on the side. They, in fact, people are Arabs. They don't even allow the word Palestinian. And so, you know what I'm saying? Like, so, but when you talk about Israel, you have all this texture, you have all this separation, and this is that, and these cultural things, and they want you to understand. So the challenge, like, serious people are interested in that texture all the way down, all the time, on all sides, which brings us back to humanism again, which brings us back to noticing that, you know, the point is to notice a genocide before it happens, like at the early stages, not a year after, you know?
Oh, but they're still in mid genocide, right? Like right now, right now they're trying to evacuate northern Gaza and call it like a you know demilitarized zone, and that's just like that's it's like
It's
that means
wild.
they're probably just gonna try to keep it, right? Or definitely, I don't know. It's either probably it's at least probably um
They are
you know
likely.
or it'll be like their big you know concession later, right? At most. Like it's and then they just the thing is also it's happened before so many times
Yes.
because it's classic colonialism,
Yes.
right? and but then you want like people to say specifically, like you know, it's just so strange. It's such a strange thing,
It's
and it's
crazy
also
to
like it's not
watch.
even, and it's not even like it's also just white supremacists, because also within Israel, different types of Jews get treated differently,
Hmm.
right? And even have, Arab Jews, right, can also have like um second, or I'm sorry, Israeli Arabs have the second class citizenship as well. So
Israeli Arabs.
what
Yeah.
it really doesn't even become, you want to make it this like religious or ethnic hate. It's just like, no, you want there to be some exception that doesn't make any sense.
Exactly.
And I'm not gonna like, you can't convince me to make an exception
But you
for
see,
a particular
but you
group.
see these guys on TV and on these podcasts, like with confidence, saying that that exception needs to happen, that they have the right to do this thing, and just kind of just going for it, you know. Even like Bill Maher, you
Oh,
see
he's
him.
just openly, yeah.
It's crazy. Even like Sam Harris, someone I used to read and think was someone who had a meaningful thing to say about ethics. You familiar with Sam Harris?
He's an atheist, right?
He's an atheist, but he has like a
Yeah, but he's
secular.
a huge Islamophobe as well, right?
He's a
That's the other
huge
thing.
Islamophobe, and that's what's
So is Bill
motivating
Maher,
this.
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
crazy to watch though, because now it's extra normal, and I'm afraid about, and they're also delegitimizing the entire all the international bodies, challenging their ability to enforce any of their rulings, and to an applause from Congress and from a lot of Christians. How
I'll
interesting.
give you another recent thing that I saw that's even more. I don't, going back to liberals. Sorry, it's like I love
Take
liberals.
us back to
Anyway,
liberals, yeah.
uh, that I saw for Fareed Zakaria. Are you familiar with him?
Hmm.
Yeah. So like CNN, and it's like, it was like, these other countries are trying to destabilize the world international order, right? And I'm like, okay, so who are they, right? These countries, it's Russia,
Hmm.
it's China, it's Iran, and it's just like,
That's their
are
thing.
you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Like, this is your worldview, and everybody thinks you're the greatest, and you're on the left leaning,
Fareed was saying this.
like
That's unfortunate. That's crazy.
yeah, 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 and it's just like the international order. It's like, okay, so the internet, in a sense, what you're saying is the international order is the colonialism wins, and
Yeah.
like, let's just get this genocide over with. There's a lot of people
They're
that think that way. It's just
saying
like,
that. They're saying
get
that.
it over
Do it
with.
faster. You know?
Yeah, that's what this tension is. It's obviously complicated because obviously, you know, and also a lot of after you're going through generations of brainwashing, especially, and everything going to the right internally in Israel, the people don't have a good sense of the reality of the rest of the world, right?
Correct.
They
Yeah.
get the support from the U.S. and that's it for the most part. I mean, obviously other countries in Europe, but even some of them have been,
They
a little
backed
bit,
off. Yeah.
somewhat unlike the U.S. And it's so disgusting, it really is just so disgusting because it's the US's genocide. I mean, let that be clear, because it can't be, it's not just Israel's, it's the US and Israel's.
Big
Um
time.
yeah.
How do you think, like, I truly believe, I know that the history books will, when we say history books, it's 2024, right? Who's reading books? The history is being documented in this moment in a vast, complex series of videos and social media, from the region and in across the world. The proper record will be set straight, right? Even though people are being crazy. I believe that. And I wonder
I mean,
how does
but
that unfold is the question for me. You know what I mean? Like, because a lot of people are gonna have to come down from a crazy high horse.
they'll just, I mean, it'll just, maybe it just means that those bubbles keep on moving, and people, because that's why they, like, what is it, history, not to get like too like philosophical or whatever about it, but like, you know, with what we see now, if you stay in a bubble, your reality is different. So are we going to start seeing that for history as well, like for prolonged
Yes.
periods of time, where like, no, you really did believe? I mean, it still happens. These people
Yeah.
still, some people are still just waking up to Vietnam now, right? Like no, that was some bullshit,
Yeah.
uh
Yeah.
so So how long will that be? Now that you could have history that, as you say, supposedly here's the historical record, but if you never see that historical record and you have another one that's completely different, and it could, in a sense, be satisfying,
Yeah.
you know, it's just that could also just be scary because, but I don't know. I think that might be, maybe that's too far out there, and there is hopefully. I'm
No.
also just trying to be pessimistic because I don't want to over estimate the fact that people are like waking up because of it, and that it's just too big of an argument and too many contradictions.
I think you're pointing to some crazy stuff, man. I mean, in a weird way, you're pointing to some weird Black Mirror kind of like, dystopian stuff, but it's also just true. If we will allow that and not be weirded out by it, the fact that each of us has a different reality in our heads, each of us exists in a completely different universe, essentially. And the thing that ties us together is language. The thing that ties us together is love and communication. If you believe, if someone convinced you that I'm a monster who's done a terrible set of things to people, you'll feel justified in doing it. You'll live in a completely different world, and the only way is to be present and go and to really question the story that we hold. And so the technologies give us the opportunity to have our bubbles, but they also give us the opportunity to jump bubbles in a ways that our ancestors couldn't, I think. um
For sure,
so
of
so so,
course.
so who knows how it goes.
Yeah, for sure. But I'm just saying that, like, how does it all play out, and how big, what bubble?
Yeah.
How big is a bubble? Is it two big general bubbles? Is it three? Like
Mm-hmm.
and the U.S. is very much colored as two, but obviously it's more complicated than just that.
Yeah.
And then there's, like, again, then there's also, you know even in what goes for the left in the U.S. on social things. Like, there's definitely excesses, and there's definitely things that I'm just like, you're crazy, that doesn't make sense. But you know there's, any every single tribe or group is going to have certain things that could be, that don't withstand logic, right? But
Absolutely,
some people on the left believe that they've surpassed that, and
right.
it's just, it's absolute
And the
bullshit.
right. See, that's the thing. Everybody, but the left
Wait,
has the left has this particular thing where they think that they're smart. That quite often, and they are. I mean, I,
right,
I think that the left people are. We're particularly the whole point of it. Again, we're closer to that notion of the humanism, which is to me the smartest place you can be, right? To come to that like acceptance of our shared humanity. So the left has that, and then they kind of. So what you're saying is that becomes it kind of blocks you from seeing your own like absurdity.
yeah, no matter what group, there's going to be shit that has to be critiqued. And I think that there's also, you know what's the difference between your politics and the personal, right? You people could say that it's, there's like that saying that what's personal is political, and vice versa. But um you know you have to, you know I would say, for example, also, like, yeah, what you have to, do you really act that way? How are you in your personal life? And I think that, in a way, um is going to become more relevant.
Mm, mm. So this is interesting because if I could follow what I think you're saying, right? Because I have this thing about, I think everything's one thing. By the way, do you? How does that sound to you?
Cool, yeah.
Everything is one thing, man. We have all these different labels for stuff, but it's all one thing. And I think, again, back to the
Right,
journalism stuff, I think a lot of us, we're in this social media era, and a lot of us had modeled for us these shitty conversations from cable news. We've had modeled for us, suits and ties and performance. And I think, and then you got the monetization of stuff. So we're trying, people are trying to play their hand and becoming famous and, like,
yeah.
performance. I think if we do this right, man, you and me and everybody else, we keep pressing into this notion of being genuine, man. I want to tune in to see Arturo genuinely giving me Arturo and like his real shit, not some stuff that he's saying because he has a partnership with Dove or whatever, or you know what I'm saying, like,
Right.
and like and this sense of
Or his
genuineness,
job. What does he do for a living?
right?
And it's all right to ask some of those questions, right?
Exactly, it's okay. It's necessary, and the best of this, in fact, to normalize that, right? That our discourse, we can take into account. Yeah, Arturo's, he's coming from this perspective. This is what he's done. This is what his passions are. He's born, El Salvador, and that helps us understand your truth even more.
Yes. Yes. I think also like lots of times though people for like activists sometimes it's like, oh, this is what they do for a living or blah blah blah. And it's just like, oh, that has to be good. Or there's just this or obviously people think of it as being like, I don't know, part of some conspiracy theory or whatever to paid by George Soros, right? But it's just kind of like, no, there's actually this other place where it makes more sense. And it's just like they pay him, so he's gonna self-censor certain things, right?
Wait, who?
And that's like, or even if you're just working for like a nonprofit that does
I got you.
good,
Yeah.
let's say good work, right? Let's just, for sake of argument, they do good work.
Yeah.
You still are going to self-censor if you're, you know, if people know that's
Funding
what
sources and
where
shit.
you work. There's always, I think there's also the privatization versus the privatization of activism, right? And what has that what does that actually what has that actually done to quote unquote the movement in the United States as of now, in other countries,
Yeah.
right? And because there's then they become part of, everybody has their masters, then they're still living in a capitalist system and they still have funders and blah blah blah. So it's also, when we talk about what we're going to do, I'm just much more conscious of that now that I'm taking a break from paid work. How just it impacts you a lot more than you think when you're in that work,
Big time. It's important to remember that. That's why I think a huge dose of humility has to be a part of our
Exactly.
experience and what we're doing.
You know what? I don't know if you remember, but that was one of the things I told our mutual friend Jesse
Mm.
one time. I always remember that because I'll tell you the whole story later. But I was just, we were talking about something and like, it was just like, at least I came to the conclusion, I was like, humility. That's really like where it all starts. Like solidarity. Before solidarity, you have to have humility, for real solidarity, because otherwise you are going to be coming at, obviously it's complicated because when you have different privilege levels, right? But still coming at people as equals as much as possible. And then that also, me as a lawyer, right? People, sometimes, especially for example, Latin America, sometimes it's even more so like putting you on a pedestal for having like the degree, and it's just like that's never going to work for
Yeah.
me. It's just rationally that's not something that I'm going to change. You know what I mean? I'm not coming in there and like making this huge difference
Right.
by myself, right? Like even if I have this title, and if I go by my work thinking that way, then all I'm doing is cutting a paycheck.
Wait. I think I lost you there. So you're saying that you come into the rooms with humility, even though you have, like, some people put a lot of weight on like a degree, a law degree,
Right.
let's say, and you come in and you're not about that kind of separation, right? That we should be.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because if you are about that separation, then your work's not ultimately going to be effective.
Absolutely.
So then if it's not effective, and you know that it's not effective, then you're just cutting a paycheck, right? And then, but like you said, this notoriety, like part of that, like, because we're all having to advertise ourselves one way or the other.
Yep.
Right. And in a sense, you have to advertise yourself because, I mean, where do you get jobs? It's usually through people that
Yeah.
or somebody knows, or, or people just saw your shit, right? If you're depending on that, because you advertise in a sense on social media, right? Because you don't know, maybe you're advertising for yourself today, but you keep the same job for another 5 years, but you advertised for yourself 5 years ago and people remember.
Yeah.
Right. So it's complicated because of I think some of those things we have to be able to actually really talk about.
Yeah.
Like that's why I was saying that the personal is political, is that we have to actually be able to talk about these things more honestly, like
including even bigger, more like including the self, this whole separation. Right. See, it's the thing with the one, right? Think about the oneness again, right? This whole personal versus professional, that's contrived separation. That's not real. That's a concept. You know what I mean? And the failure to do that, if you think, oh, we're gonna be professional here, it sets you up to you're looking at a blurry. It's not reality. You know, you got to like actually broaden the whole thing. You would love this conversation Ta-Nehisi Coates had with Trevor Noah recently, because he talks
Okay.
about this. He talks about himself talking about Palestine, and he talks about himself. He recognizes that he's a Black American talking about a group of people that he's not a member of that group, but that he's using his platform and his credibility and his awareness to advocate for them, and that it's very important for him to balance himself and to not become, because everybody's rushing to him for his opinion on this thing, but he wants to elevate Palestinians. You know, he knows, he said as a quote, like he's trying to make his statement, make clear what he saw and what he knows, and then he wants to get out of the way. And so I think there's like this element of like you have to kind of like let stuff die and then like kind of like start again, you know, because you can get attached to shit and you're no longer doing the work, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of, yeah, exactly. A lot of it's really mixed in,
Yeah.
back in, that was also in a way what back in the day, there's certain moments in time where people live through some horrible shit. But at least if you live through a war, it's kind of easier to be like, I'm on the right side, right?
If you live through a
Like,
war, like
yeah,
in a war
you know
zone.
that you're,
Well, people
sorry.
people live through wars and they don't know that they're on the right side though.
Well, you believe it though, right?
Right.
So you believe one way or the other. If you I'm not even saying that you have to like take arms necessarily, but like, I mean, but if there is a wartime, there's like there's a lot, then there's a lot more people that are taking an active side, if one way or the other.
Right.
And I think that at least, I'm just saying that at least that there's moral clarity, even if you're on the wrong side. Let's say you do that, you're a Nazi, you still believe that, and at least for for the left, it's just a confusing time as well. It's just very confusing. Um, you know,
Mm.
both like politically and on a personal level.
Yeah. I mean, everybody's going through so much, man, and I think that's one of the challenges with trying to organize because everyone is thinking about the personal and is struck. Was it the Naomi Klein book, Shock Doctrine? Everyone's kind of in a shock position, trying to scramble for the personal. It's very hard to look over and say, "Let me care for my neighbor."
Right. But then it also brings us back to healing, right?
Mm.
Which is when, and if you're not fucked up, I mean, if you're still really fucked up, if you're not healing or trying to, then it makes it more likely that you'll cause more harm to others or yourself by
Yep.
if you're like in being involved. And like, so if you need time to, for healing, then it's completely relevant as well, right? There's always like a level of what you can do, right? And we can
Yeah.
also be honest about that kind of stuff without putting too much pressure on ourselves, if you are committed to the truth and you know improvement in society.
And I'm gonna kind of wrap in a few, bro. But to like to piggy on that, like, yeah, to again being honest, being accepting of the truth includes even that, bro.
Yeah.
It includes the self, and then you talk about all this work and the way we define ourselves and the things we should be doing. It includes our insecurities. It includes this sense like I'm the oldest son, man. I grew up with this like family, like I'm the family savior type of motherfucker. Like I'm gonna gonna make money so my mom could buy my family a house and all this. I put so much pressure on myself, and I'm only in my late 30s that I start to really notice the ways it was manifesting in myself. So it's like it's constantly about noticing these things, accepting, and then and somehow this is a thing we call healing. It really is it works. It's psychology, it's spiritual, it's sociological, it's all kinds of things, bro. Last word on you.
Free Palestine. I
Free
mean,
Palestine. Absolutely.
yeah, yeah, it really is. It's funny because also, just I would say last thing was, I've been through some shit this year, and it having correlated with what's going on in Palestine, um, has been really, it's been really odd because a lot of the same things that I feel like, have been, the roots of my trauma on a personal level have been similar to what I see, going on there as far as like, you know, fake frameworks, how people get so committed to lies, how people, and how it really is just about power and money.
Mm.
And it's been, I think maybe that's part of what's happening, right? So people also seeing you can make that connection to your own life, because it really is all connected. All is one,
It
as you
really
said.
is, brother. It really is, man. And yeah, I mean, in all the ways, liberation and freedom in all the ways, and truth and love in all the ways, across all of these. So I wish you
Yeah.
the best, man. I really
You
appreciate you
too.
coming on, brother. I don't know if you have anything
Appreciate
you
it.
want to plug, a final thing, or we'll just wrap it up.
No, that's good. Thanks,
All
man.
right, bro. Free Palestine. Thank you.
All right. Peace.
Peace.
Uh-huh. Last things first, you already win. You already him. You don't gotta pretend. Fuck them. You already king. You stay real. You confident in your skin. It's all now. Sit in the power that you already in. This the story of a master from a true Bedouin, far away from home than few ever been. First round pick, league of the smooth gentleman. The game rigged like 50 said it's a cruel sentiment. I'm from the era when lyrics and bars is over everything. 5-star veteran. You couldn't walk in my fucking shoes or carry them. Excuse my borderline is very thin. Been married to the game like ever since maybe 2010. I realized most of y'all not serious. Point blank period. I flex and twist necks like cherry stems. Thought he was buried, but there he is, a new narrative.
I
keep winning.
They not used to what you bringing, kid.
I keep winning.
They don't even know what they looking at.
I
for
keep
real.
winning.
Man, yo, pick one lane and stay in that
I
shit.
keep winning.
You came up on that hood shit.
I
my
keep
nigga,
winning.
Nobody seeing your vision for real.
I keep
man.
winning.
Even your friends don't fuck with you.
I keep
nigga.
winning.
Be ready for your turn.
So
though,
here's your
B.
one shot right now. Your heart pounding. Clear throat right when the crowd pipe down. It's kinda like time froze on ice now. Damn, stomach tight round flipped upside down.